Welcome to RSA Conference 2023. We're here recording live from Broadcast Alley in Moscone West. This interview was sponsored by Zscaler. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me today for this interview is Deepen Desai, Global CISO and Head of Security Research for Zscaler. So that's a really interesting title. You know, I know CISOs are kind of a special breed at a vendor, right?
Right.
You have all sorts of different mixes of, looking out for the security of your own company, also being an evangelist, working with sales and helping to explain and sell the product, and but also you've got the head of research title.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about your role there at Zscaler.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean it's definitely an advantage to be a CISO and head of security research on the vendor side. I have a global team of 200 plus experts.
Wow.
They're tracking threat landscape. They're continuously monitoring what's out there, and the goal is two-pronged. Right? One is obviously we want to make sure the integrity of our own infrastructure is secured. But at the same time, we're also innovating our product, our detection technologies to keep up with the evolving threat landscape. So if new stuff come out, uh, we want to make sure we're ahead of the game in blocking those, defending those, and helping organizations that rely on Zscaler to protect themselves.
Right, right. And I understand as part of that research, you have a new report out on phishing. What's the name of the report?
Yeah, it's a phishing threat landscape report. We do an annual one every year around this time frame. We also have a ransomware annual report that goes out in mid-year. But for phishing report, the goal was to study all the campaigns that we saw over 2022, and then also compare it to the year before. What changed? How
Right.
are the threat actors changing their tools, tactics, and procedures? And why are we seeing so many of these attacks becoming successful? Phishing is
Yeah.
important because it's the starting point. None of the attacks are now where they send the final malware payload in an email as an attachment and call it done. It starts with phishing, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's ransomware, whether it's info stealer, whether it's nation state. They want to get that initial foothold established, and that's where phishing is, in majority of the cases, the first delivery vector.
Yeah. Yeah, and I imagine when you do this report, like some of the things, maybe the stats are a little bit different, up and to the right, maybe down a little bit, maybe the industry's gotten better at something. But what stood out the most to you? What really, did anything really pop out this year?
Yeah, so in terms of raw volume, it continues to grow. We saw almost 47% increase in number of phishing attempts. And these are phishing attempts targeting enterprise users. Right? These are large global enterprises whose employees are being targeted. So 47% increase in those attacks. In terms of brands that these threat actors are leveraging, we saw Microsoft at the top, no surprise, because they have a lot of properties, right? Like
Right.
SharePoint, OneDrive, Office 365.
So it's like the skin of the phishing email is what you're talking about when you say
Yes,
brands? Yeah.
the
The
theme,
theme, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Which credentials are the bad guys after? So
Yeah.
Microsoft was at the top, and then it was followed by things like Binance, the crypto
Of course,
exchange,
of course.
right? Wherever they're able to make cash, right? They're going to go after that. And then, like I said, I mean, phishing is just a starting point. Like
Yeah.
it's a
Initial foothold, yeah.
full supply chain model where these gangs will establish that initial foothold and sell that access to the next level operators who will then leverage that access for their call to objective, be it
Right.
ransomware, be it stealer. Right? So that's how it functions. Uh, One of the key things that we noticed was, and I'm going into a little bit of specifics, but leveraging automation, machine learning to conduct some of these attacks. One of the campaign that the team saw was around job scams. And this job scam is not new. It's been
Right.
around for quite a while. What we saw over the last 2 to 3 months is these groups were taking advantage of the layoffs. It's kind of cruel,
Oh, yeah.
right? All the layoffs that are happening in the tech industry, and they will monitor LinkedIn. They will monitor the companies
Wow.
that are still hiring. They will mirror those job posting on a newly stood up domain, which is very similar to the hiring company, and then they will start targeting these victims that were laid off and they're like I'm looking for a job, you will be able to find those on sites like LinkedIn.
Right.
And then once they are able to convince the victim to apply for the job, they now have a lot of sensitive information
Yeah.
about the victim.
Yeah.
They will actually go ahead and conduct an interview where they will have the picture of a real recruiter from the hiring company
Okay.
used on their Skype profile. And the interview, victims will always pass the interview. They will get the
Right.
job, right? And then they will ask them to pay a deposit, right? Something to get the IT equipment shipped to them. It's all refundable,
Right.
but they never get the refund.
Right. Right.
So that was one of the, I would say, cruel one, but
Having to pay to start a new job is the key red flag there, right?
it's a key red flag, and some of them caught
Wait
it.
a minute.
Exactly. The other one, and this is something I'm actually presenting at RSA on Thursday. One of the talk track is around how these adversaries are able to bypass MFAs,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And that's where the
Yeah, if I can just preface that, years ago we thought, hey, if we rolled out MFA, like this whole attack vector is going to go away, right? But it didn't happen.
Yeah, we're away from that. Like last year, people were saying, I was talking about, hey, gone are the days when you tell your users that, hey, there's this green padlock sign and you're all secure. That's no longer the case, right? Because they're using Azure, Google, AWS, their hosting sites.
IP addresses,
right? And the certificates are wildcard certs that are issued by Microsoft or
Let's
Amazon.
Encrypt.
Exactly, or Let's Encrypt, exactly. So you, in case of these adversary in the middle attacks, they're literally doing man in the middle, and the victim receives the phishing link. When they click on it, they're brokering the connection to the actual destination. So you receive a phishing email asking for your Office 365 credential. You click on it. You see a page that is very, very lookalike to Microsoft. It may be hosted on, say, Azure, which has Windows.net at the end, right? So very hard for...
Looks legit.
Exactly. And your enterprise has MFA implemented, for instance, right? It will also ask you for that MFA token. And that's where you use your Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator app, and you enter the MFA. The kit will then connect to Office 365 or Google and establish that authenticated connection.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
they need what, at least two codes for TOTP to capture?
They just need one, just one MFA code, right?
Okay.
As soon as you enter it, they will
because they're logging in as you.
Exactly.
Ah, okay. I see.
Then they're able to persist that connection because, hey, remember this device option, right?
It'll create like an OAuth token or something like that. Correct. So they can keep it open. Yeah.
Correct. And that's where, look, when they have access to your mailbox, the exposure is still contained to you.
Then they can reset all your passwords to all your other things because the reset mechanism works through your email.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The evolution we saw over there was they also started targeting things like GitHub. Now, it's not the single user getting targeted, it's entire organization that is at risk because your IP information is now available for them to exfiltrate using those established sessions.
Well, that's what we saw happen with ransomware too. Ransomware used to be individually focused, looking for $400 here, $500 here, $1,100, and then they realized they can hit a whole company.
Yes.
And do extortion at a much larger scale. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. So the AITM is definitely another rising trend. And then the final one, and this falls under the AI/ML and automation piece as well, is where they're starting to use a combination of smishing and vishing as a vector to convince victims into clicking, performing certain financial transactions. And this falls under the business email compromise, right? They will have your CEO or your exec's voice recorded or recording. They will be sent as a voicemail to the victim. Hey, this is Deepen Desai, and then it just cuts off, and then they will follow it up with a text message saying, hey, I'm in an area where the network is really bad. Can you do X, Y, and Z for me?
Yeah.
Right, and that's how they have been successful in many of the cases. So that's another one that we're tracking actively out there.
I've received a lot of the hey, I'm Doug Manoni. I'm stuck in a meeting. I need you to buy a bunch of gift cards for me or something like that.
Right.
And he's the CEO of Cyber Risk Alliance, and yeah, we've seen those before too.
So those are text messages, but now imagine you hear your CEO's voice coming in your voicemail, right?
Yeah.
And you know that voice, right? Oh, okay, that does sound like my CEO. So that adds that additional
realism.
layer. Yeah, exactly.
Again, the red flag. When has a CEO ever asked you to go buy a bunch of gift cards? Right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Yes. So, yeah, that brings me to what the organizations can do in this case, especially this scenario that we just discussed. I mean, training is definitely number one, right? And training has to evolve. The green padlock piece that we discussed is no longer true. Nor can you train them, hey, these text messages and all. You need to have continuously updated training that tells your employees about what's out there in the threat landscape. So this should also include your phishing simulation exercise.
So you walk them through like the real scenarios we've been talking about, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the security controls that you have in place should be leveraging those zero trust underlying principles, where you're able to do two things. A, you're able to educate the user at the time they're about to make a mistake, right? So alerting them, hey, you're about to visit a site that's not safe. Don't enter your credentials. Don't download your files. Don't upload anything sensitive.
I think one of the biggest things in the last 10 years that happened is just a little thing in your email that says this came from an outside organization.
Exactly.
Like it's just a bit of text that's added to, the body of the email, but that's huge when it's trying to pretend like it came from inside.
Absolutely. And now imagine that similar notification or assistance in line on the network layer itself, where you're about to connect and you see a page that says, hey, you're about to visit a destination that's not safe. So do not. And that has helped a lot of organizations globally. It's there. The organization needs to configure that. We offer that to our customers, and it has resulted.
It's like a secure web gateway function?
It's a secure web gateway function, and you need to have the cloud-native proxy architecture to kind of intercept, terminate the connection, make a connection on their behalf, and then you're able to
or more of a CASB then?
No, this is inline CASB. I mean, you could call it CASB, but it has to be inline. You
Forward
can't do
proxy.
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha.
The second thing is, and I'll hit up on the zero trust principle here. This is where me wearing my CISO hat, how do I look to secure my own environment? And when I talk to other CISO security execs, I always talk about 4 building blocks of implementing zero trust. Number one is, what can you do to reduce your external attack surface?
Yeah.
When an adversary is trying to plan an attack, they look at what all things are visible, whether it's your VPN, your public-facing assets, your cloud workloads. They start from there. So you need to have technology in place that allows you to reduce your external attack surface. Number 2 is preventing that initial compromise.
Yeah.
You need to have consistent security policy no matter where your users are, whether they're at home, in office, or at RSA conference, right? You need to have that policy follow the user. Number 3 is where assume breach scenario, right? Which is the fundamental zero trust principle.
Exactly.
If your asset were to get compromised, it should
what
not...
What can you jump to?
Correct. The blast radius has to be contained to that asset alone. That's the true fundamental principle of zero trust.
Otherwise, you're not doing zero trust.
You're not doing zero trust. And then finally, they're all after your data, right? So anything that egresses your assets, your servers, your endpoints, they need to go through a true inline data loss prevention engine. Right? And that's where, again, cloud native proxy architecture allows you to intercept those, apply your EDM, IDM-based dictionaries and block. Even in case of ChatGPT, like a lot of the organizations are leaking out.
I was going to say, we got a minute left. We got to fit in ChatGPT.
I know, that's the buzzword for this time. I mean, it has tremendous potential. We're leveraging it for solving many of the use cases. We're ahead on the threat detection side, AI ops, bunch of other. We're also guiding our customers on how to use it safely. But then at the same time, there is the risk of exfiltrating data inadvertently. So we've evolved our product to allow organizations to prevent that data exfiltration, which may be not intentional, right?
Or intentional.
Or intentional, right? So the goal over there is to allow the organizations to prevent that exfiltration. At the same time, enable them to harness the power of large language models.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Excellent stuff. And we're right on time. And thank you so much, Deepen, for joining me today and letting me chat with you about this report. If you go to securityweekly.com/Zscaler RSAC, you can find a link to this report and learn more about Zscaler. And if you can't stick around for the rest of the live stream or you're catching this afterwards, head on over to securityweekly.com/RSAC to find all of the RSA conference coverage by Cyber Risk Alliance. Thank you again, Deepen.
Thank you.
Yeah.